issues that my honourable friend, the member for Dudley South, also raised. And it is the threat of a brand new road to come through Buckingham constituency, indeed to go through the constituencies of many honourable and right honourable members in this House, that is the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway. And this isn't just a new road, it is a new road that comes with a desire along the whole route of 1 million new homes. Now, I am no opponent of house building. We need new homes in our country, new homes that people can afford to buy, and indeed, I will say that we also need to build more social housing. But 1 million new homes across the Buckinghamshire countryside in particular is an unacceptable proposition for my constituents. So, let's look at some of the themes that surround the building of this road. There is a great deal of uncertainty. For the Highways Agency have come up with what they call their preferred route, which comes under the typical public sector speak of simply Corridor B. And Corridor B is actually about 3/4 of my constituency. And to put it into context, my constituency is 335 square miles. So there is absolutely no certainty for my constituents, were this expressway to go ahead, exactly the route it would follow. And it would bring with it significant environmental destruction, not just to our beautiful countryside, but to wildlife, to ancient woodland, to our biodiversity, and most importantly, the effect it would have on people's lives, on their property, on the disruption through construction, on the destruction of their property as farms are taken, homes are taken, businesses are taken. And indeed, once, if it goes ahead, it is built, the impact of noise, the impact on people's health, on the enjoyment of their property, and I fear to say in some cases, people's very enjoyment of their property and their mental health. And the road plus the housing development on Greenland that would have to go with it would massively increase the risk of flooding, and we are suffering considerably in Buckinghamshire from an increase in flooding as a result of overdevelopment. And of course, it cannot be lost on the House that at a time when we are trying to reduce carbon output and get to net zero by 2050, building a new motorway is not a sensible step to take. I would be delighted.
I'm very grateful for the honourable gentleman to give way on that point. I should, at this point, Madam Deputy Speaker, declare an interest because, as well as knowing his constituency incredibly well and beautiful though it is, I actually represent a council ward in that constituency. And that council ward is in the corridor, as my honourable friend described it. Would he agree with me that there are many things wrong with this idea? There's the idea that building a new road will somehow increase productivity, when we all know that the great cities of Oxford and Cambridge are renowned for their contribution to research and science, which, as far as I can tell, IP, Madam Deputy Speaker, does not travel by road. There's the economic case, which is incredibly flimsy, and my honourable friend referred to the suspiciously round figure of 1 million new homes. But it is the environmental case that is the most, and I'm sure he will agree, Madam Deputy Speaker, the most poignant here. 60 miles of new road, with 2.5 miles either side of building, does not make environmental sense.
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. Indeed, it is always sensible to listen to your constituents, and I'm delighted he has raised that point this afternoon. Indeed, there is significant local opposition to this scheme. Aylesbury Vale District Council, for which my honourable friend also sits, and Buckinghamshire County Council have both, on a cross-party basis, opposed the expressway scheme. And I think they should be given full credit for refusing to sign the demands of the Highways Agency when they wanted both councils to sign non-disclosure agreements so that to try and stop them from representing their residents effectively. And there are also significant resident groups both across the entire route of the expressway and indeed in Buckinghamshire, the No Expressway Group and the Buckinghamshire Expressway Action Group, who I'm delighted will be coming to Parliament on the 26th of February to ensure that their voices are also heard on this matter. And throughout the general election campaign and since my election to this House, I have received a significant number of representations from constituents on this matter. So it is very much on the minds of my constituents. I mentioned earlier that my principal objection is the impact this will have on people, the loss of property, their homes, farms. I represent a very much agricultural economy, a rural constituency on which farming is so dependent, and we cannot keep concreting over those fields, those businesses that sustain our farmers and indeed grow and rear the food we need and enjoy. And a point that I would raise here, and I don't want to dwell on the decision that was announced earlier this week on High Speed 2, but the cumulative impact now that High Speed 2 has been given the go-ahead, to the disappointment of my constituents, the cumulative impact of building this expressway as well would bring abject misery to my constituents. Then there is the point of the destruction of wildlife. The expressway will have a devastating impact on wildlife across the whole route. Mark Vallance of the Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust has commented that part of the route would destroy, and I quote, Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the most undisturbed and wildlife-rich areas of Buckinghamshire. And indeed, as the Wildlife Trust say on their own website, and I use their words as they are so eloquent, that the risks of the expressway, what would be destroyed by the expressway, are stunning wildlife meadows, ancient woodland, hedgerows alive with birds and butterflies, and gentle undulating ridge and furrow fields that have survived since the Middle Ages. Now, on the point of homes, I mentioned earlier that I am no opponent of development, but I very much agree with my honourable friend, the member for Dudley South, that we should be looking to brownfield sites to develop new homes, not our green belt, not our countryside, not our farmers' fields. And Aylesbury Vale District have already been very ambitious in the house building that they have entered into in recent years and have in their local plan. Some 28,000 new homes, and that actually compares very highly compared to many other district councils covering similar ground. And so I do feel that we in Buckinghamshire, particularly within the Aylesbury Vale district area, have taken our fair share of new home building, and we should be looking, yes, to the remaining brownfield sites, but also other places to take their fair share of the new homes. And the other point that I would make is that along the whole ARC corridor, the Oxford to Cambridge ARC corridor, there actually has been identified some 3,130 hectares of brownfield site that would be good for house building, and I think we should absolutely only look at that first. Now, my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes North, when he intervened, mentioned that the economic case is also not right for the expressway. It is projected to cost somewhere between £4 and £8 billion. That is an estimate at the start of the scheme, so we know where these sort of schemes normally go. And indeed, the business case is very weak, with the benefit to cost ratio at the start of the scheme showing that roughly a £1.10 to £1.30 per pound spent return is expected from it. And I would put it to this House that that simply is not good enough. So, during the election campaign, I was delighted when my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Transport, visited Verney Junction in my constituency to discuss this, and he did make a number of pledges and commitments that I want to put on record. I would very much like to see the government bring forward as soon as is possible, where a priority review of the Expressway was promised, where my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, did state that he didn't think the case for the Expressway stacked up, and that we should look at other schemes that can improve east-west travel, both by road and rail, and indeed cycling through Buckinghamshire instead. In particular, we need to look at improvements to the A41, the A421, two major A roads that pass through my constituency, to get those moving faster rather than build new roads, and where residents consent to it and where residents want it, to build all-important bypasses. For example, the residents of the village of Wing in the east of my constituency are very keen to see money brought forward to relieve their village of heavy goods traffic and general traffic as people travel north-south, principally from Aylesbury to Leighton Buzzard and up to Milton Keynes. And also, and I'm delighted that the government has signed off East-West Rail to make sure East-West Rail happens on time and on budget, but also to keep the debate open before the final detail is signed off for East-West Rail to be electrified rather than run on diesel. So, if I may conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is the wrong project. The Oxford to Cambridge Expressway is the wrong project for my constituency. I can genuinely say it has virtually no public support in my constituency, or indeed that of other honourable and right honourable members. So let's have that priority review. Let's stop concreting over Buckinghamshire and look to other projects that can improve the lives of my constituents.